I know we're under a Labor government. That's obviously should be our main focus. It has been for the past week. But this day is huge for the Conservative movement, and these new leaders could shape Conservative politics for a decade. So, joining me to discuss this is Michael Kroger, former Victorian Liberal President, and Liberal Senator Holly Hughes. Michael, let me start with you. The Liberals under Peter Dutton, what difference do you expect?
So, Andrew, there will be a massive concentration, as he has said, on the suburbs and the disadvantages suffered by people in the suburbs and obviously in the country towns and rural areas. Examining how the privileges that we have of those that live in the inner city are such that, the problems faced by those in the suburbs are not highlighted much. They have to drive further, the public transport fares are more expensive, the shopping centres, the movie theatres, all the recreational activities are further away, so are the hospitals, so are the dentists. So people in the suburbs who are the quiet Australians put up with disadvantages, minor though some of are, but cumulatively they suffer from big disadvantages, and it all comes back to economics, as against those in the city. And I would hope that Peter Dutton will start to examine a lot of these issues, bring them to the fore, and make those people realise that they need some attention. Everything seems to be about big bridges, big roads, big changes in the cities. And the suburbs have quite frankly been forgotten, and Dutton is absolutely right in that regard.
Holly Hughes, does this mean that you're going to give up on the seats that you lost, particularly to the climate independents, the really rich seats, Wentworth in Sydney, Kooyong, Goldstein, which takes in Brighton in Melbourne? Is that going to be a switch? You say, well, they're rich enough that we've lost the rich, let's go for the middle class?
Look, no, I don't think we're going to give up on those seats at all. Those seats have always traditionally been Liberal, and I think when they see how ineffective these teal members are and how a lot of them are actually just Labor in teal clothing, that they may actually start to review what their vote has done in this election. Thankfully though, and I know this is going to sound a little bit strange, it does look like Labor is going to be able to govern in a majority. And that means that these teal independents and their views will not be required to ensure that the Labor Party can govern in the House of Representatives. So I think for the country that is actually a good thing. I was just listening to you talking about a number of issues, and I'm going to tell you, Andrew, I think you and I could be on a very strong unity ticket here. But the teals, when we talk about the suburbs, when we talk about people at disadvantage, when we talk about the regions, these people don't know anything about it except where their ski lodge and their beach houses are. They are not any way, shape or form connected to those everyday Australians who are suffering mortgage stress, the everyday Australians who go in and put $20 or $30 of petrol in their car because that's all they can afford to do. I'm pretty sure when they pop into the Double Bay service station that they're just filling up their Range Rover whilst their Tesla's charging at home for their virtue signalling. And not worrying about what those numbers are ticking over at the pump. So they are very privileged seats. They're now represented by people who are fundamentally single issue, but who are also going to have very, very limited influence within the House of Representatives. Yeah,
but against that, Holly, I have to say, you can make exactly the same argument about Zali Steggall, who took Tony Abbott's seat of Warringah the election before this and retained it. Once some of these people are in, these independents, there's a sticking power. And I'm not sure you can assume that they're all going to see the light come the next election. But seeing the light,
I do give Wentworth hope. They saw the light with Karen. I'm hoping they'll see the light. But again, we're looking at a group of people good comeback. But it's about seeing the light, global warming. It's why you get me here, Andrew. Michael, it's why you get me here.
Am I right, Michael Kroger, to assume that Peter Dutton doesn't dare to fight the global warming religion, not directly? His theory is just too great, and some of the Liberals are off with the fairies on this one. So he's just buying time for people to see, as Holly just suggested, to feel the pain of Labor's global warming policy and then wonder, is it really worth it?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And if you look at all the anecdotal evidence of polling over the last couple of years, Andrew, we have these majorities of people concerned about global warming, but when they're asked to pay for it, they say no. So they expect the government to do something about this, but not at their cost. And if you find in Australia next year, as I think there will be a significant economic downturn when property values start to decline, when the cost of living increases, when mortgage rates go up, and the government essentially loses control of the budget, which I think they'll do. I think they've already seem to have lost control of it already for the reasons you just explained. You know, these teals supporters will start to drift away very quickly when the economic reality stick hits those electorates. And as Holly said, without influence, without a capacity to influence the new Labor federal government, people will walk away from them and realise that this was not a good idea. And what was it all about? I mean, to swap the treasurer of the country, a profoundly influential, significant figure like Josh Frydenberg, for a teal independent with no economic knowledge whatsoever, is a serious mistake that I think the electors in Kooyong will come to realise.
Well, look, I'd love this to be true, but I have to say that it sounds a little bit to me like wishful thinking. I suspect a lot of those teal candidates will be there next time round too. But Holly, now you said, and my heart went pitter-pat when you said we were very much on a unity ticket given what I said in the editorial. So let me hit you with this one, because this is the one that really worries me most. Signing up to Labor's plan to change the Constitution to create a kind of advisory parliament just for Aborigines. Peter Dutton did not say no to that today. He did not. Why not, when the Liberals should be totally against this kind of tribalism and this apartheid?
Look, I'm not going to put words in Peter Dutton's mouth, but I certainly did an interview earlier today with Dorinda Cox, the Greens First Nations senator, who acknowledged that this parliament will see more Indigenous First Nations people elected than ever before. And in my view, parliament is the voice of the people and the electorate. But I think the biggest problem that we face with this voice that's being proposed, it looks like a bureaucratic nightmare. We have Labor and the Greens on a unity ticket to abolish the cashless debit card. And for all their scaremongering, I've been on committees that's been out to Indigenous communities and met with these groups who were very grateful for the cashless debit card, because women were not being humbugged or their social security welfare payments taken from them. They were able to actually use the card to provide food for their families, to provide school equipment for their children. And without this sort of mechanism and opening it up, it reopens the old problems that we saw in Indigenous communities with access to alcohol. And we do know that there are significant domestic violence issues affecting women and children in Indigenous communities. Now, I would very much like to see something that improves the lives of these people, not a bureaucratic, pat me on the back, make me feel good about myself from the inner city, rather than the actual people who are impacted in Indigenous communities. So my fear, though, is that any time, and what I just said, I'm now a racist. You need both. Well, I don't necessarily
you've got to fight
agree.
against that. Yeah.
And look, every
Hughes,
time you ask a question, every time you
much.
say something, you can't be accused of being a racist.
Well, you're going to get a lot of that if you fight this proposal, and the Liberals were just going to have to man up, or woman up, Holly Hughes. So thank you very much for your time, Michael Kroger. You too. Thank you to you both.